Welcome, everybody, to the fourth annual HOA Boot Camp here in Douglas County. I am delighted about our guest today here. We have Minority Whip State Representative William Boodie of the 62nd District here. And I'm excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today, which is HOAs, or Homeownership Associations. So, State Rep, welcome.
Welcome. Well, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. It's always a pleasure. I remember when we did this probably about 5 years ago. Under different circumstances. I was new to Douglas County recently. I started my law practice and opened up an office out there, and we did a chat like this. So it's good to come full circle.
Absolutely. So what? You just got reelected? Is that what just happened?
Yeah. I ran in the primary this past June unopposed, and I will be on the ballot in November unopposed because I do not have Republican opposition. So the citizens of House District 62 found it, and I appreciate to allow me to have 2 more years to serve them in the Georgia General Assembly via the State House of Representatives. So I'm excited for 2 more years, to be able to serve.
Absolutely. And that's why you were sent back in without any opposition. We appreciate your leadership. We really do. We thank you.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, sir. So let's get into this. HOAs, so homeownership associations, which are sort of like COAs, POAs, all the above. So for the citizens, let's talk about why are they state chartered versus at the local level?
Well, because I believe because you're dealing with a circumstance of organizations that you have covenants, you have property, and I feel like the state wanted to regulate and charter HOAs on the state level because of all the property issues and land vested issues that are in play. And so I think that's my opinion, and I'm going to stick to it, right. Commissioner. But I think because of all of the property issues involved with HOAs and homeowners association, I think, the state wanted to kind of deem that and keep it in our wheelhouse a little bit.
Which I understand, but you and I both know that HOAs tend to have problems once they're turned over to the developer to the community.
Yes.
I get it. And probably inherently within it, it probably started at the state because of development. You're talking about large swaths of land. I get that need to be managed probably at the state level to keep things safe. But perhaps there should be some consideration to turn it over to the local level once it gets into the community. But let's talk about developers. I mean, let's talk about amenities that are not completed. They haven't fulfilled their world. Let's talk about that. Anything going on with that? How we can fix that and change that? Because we've got several communities, probably a handful, right here in my district that went through that.
And it's you're absolutely correct. And we saw it more in your commission district, Senator, and in my House district and Senator James' senatorial district. Right. And we dealt with this. Palmer Falls is a prime example of this occurring. And it really spawned a partnership between me, you, and Senator James to see what could we do to address this issue. Because we had in that circumstance where HOA, and I give that example, HOA, A is on the hook for 50 units and the amenities. But HOA A goes in, completes the 50 rooftops. However, they do not complete the amenities, the clubhouse, swimming pools. But then HOA B comes in, and the only thing they're contracted to do is, another 50 rooftops. And so the problem lies is that the residents now want to put the onus on HOA B or developer B, I'm sorry, and they're stating that no, we're not contractual liable to do anything. We just have these 50 rooftops to complete, and we're going to do that. But the problem is, commissioners, that HOA or builder, developer number one goes out of business. They're bankrupt. So they're nowhere to be found. And so you're left with amenities that are incomplete, not up to code most of the times. And basically, the citizens of that community are left on the hook, and they don't get the benefit of their bargain.
So how do we fix that? Where's the enforcement regarding that? Because that's my concern.
Yes. Yes. And I think now this is something that I feel like we can look at it as the state. How do we enforce that? I think the statute needs to be clear to do that. I presented capital legislation a couple of years ago to try to do that thing that you're suggesting, having enforcement of when a developer is contractually obligated to finish the amenities and all of the rooftops developments in that community, but they don't. So what is the remedy? We need a bond in place that if a developer goes bankrupt, that those amenities or units can be completed. And I just think that's fair. Now, the developers would say that that's going to drive the cost of doing business up in the state of Georgia. And so the legislation kind of paused a little bit and froze because of that issue and the outcry from the developers. And so we was like, okay, we get that. We understand. We don't want to push away businesses, but at the same time, we want to make sure that citizens and HOA communities are protected. And so what happened, Commissioner, is that we created a study committee, HR 329, which would be a committee of 3 members, special study committee through the House. You have 5 members of the Georgia General Assembly of the House that will participate on that committee. We also have the president of the HOA association in the state of Georgia. We also will have the president of the Georgia Home Builders Association, as well as the Georgia Realtors Association. So we will have everyone at the table to come up with viable solutions to make sure everyone is protected and everyone's interests are protected as well, but also making sure the consumers, which are our constituents, are most importantly protected during the whole process. And so HR 329 passed out of special rules of the House. It made it to House rules before the COVID-19 recess. And so we came back for the COVID-19 recess. It was primed to make it to the House floor, but our House leadership had based a moratorium on study committees because of the expense that it would take to install a study committee. So the House leadership decided that this year would not be the best time because of COVID-19 and all the budgetary constraints. But I would say this, Commissioner, it is a bill that got a lot of bipartisan support, including support from the House Democratic leadership and the Republican majority leadership. So it's definitely a bill that's going to move, because I was very surprised to see that this is not just occurring in the metro counties, but this is occurring across the state, including some rural areas of Georgia. So it's definitely a bipartisan issue that needs to be addressed statewide.
Well, I want to come back to your point about bonds. And I'm surprised to hear there was some pushback on that. I mean, it's a performance bond contract, right? You agreed to put in a swimming pool, a clubhouse, some swings. That ensures that it's delivered like any other construction project. So
exactly.
I'm surprised about that. Now, locally, we did put that in place. So we did, out of this situation, we put in an ordinance that requires to have bonds for delivery of those amenities. And the second thing we did is that we would not allow building permits to go forth after the halfway through whatever round of houses you got. If you got 100 houses, but at 50th house, the amenities must be in place, so you will get no more building permits. So that's what we've done here to sort of try to regulate at the local level, just to sort of keep it honest. Now, we're sensitive to what you guys may ultimately come down with, but it is working for us. It's acceptable. Palmer Falls round 2 is moving forward. They accepted those terms. And so we're trying to make it work. So maybe y'all can study us as a model.
Yeah, no. And I think, Commissioner, when you came and testified a couple of years ago, to the committee, the House committee, they were very, how can I say, you did such a good job that after that first initial committee here, they was like, well, just let the locals deal with it. You know, we don't need anything on the state level. So Commissioner did such a great job. Everyone agreed, like, okay, we're gonna let the counties deal with this. But I feel like it does need to be a statewide mandate because we need to keep it uniform. And I love the model that you have, and I definitely want to work with you with our study committee and possibly even draft the legislation that we can utilize statewide that you all have done successfully well as a Board of Commissioners in Douglas County on the county level. I think it's an excellent model that needs to be replicated throughout the state.
Absolutely. So we talked about a little bit about development. So at some point, the developer gets to a point where they're ready to turn over the books. But before they turn over the books and turn over the covenant associated with an HOA, I guess I also want to bring up the whole point of the financials. People are paying into those initial homes, right? They're paying into the HOA, and they're turning over something, and it's like, well, where's the money? Where's the accountability? Where's the maintenance? How do we get to that? Because that's the other part of it, right? It's the financial accountability.
I think we need to have, and I've talked with Commissioner Marvin Arrington and yourself about this, and I call you all my go-to gurus on HOA policy and regulations throughout the state. I just think we need to have a citizens or a buyer's bill of rights. And in that bill of rights, you kind of walk through step by step everything that they should have at the closing table and what they need to be made aware of. Because you're right, you need to be made aware of any financials that may be out there that may be against your monetary interest down the line. You need to know about any warranties or any covenants that may not have been presented to you. So I think it's twofold, Commissioner. I think we need to have an individual buyer's bill of rights in the state of Georgia. And this is just a consumer best practice document that's uniform across the state. Also, when the keys are turned over to the new HOA committee, that they need to have an opportunity to go and look at the books and be presented with those books. So therefore they can know if there's any issues or deficits that they might have to incur as a delegation down the line.
Well, and to that point, transition of power, transition of responsibility or authority, right? You went from the developer to the community. So we talked a little bit about the developer. So let's talk about now you've got this new HOA, community driven. You've got 5-member board. Yes. Now the challenge that I've seen is that there's no training for them. Some of them have experience, some of them don't. They get on this board, and think about the HOA is sort of like a council at a lower level, right? A commission at a lower level. They're self-regulated. They choose to govern themselves based on that covenant, right? So once the covenant is turned over to them, they notice an HOA is how they conduct their meetings. There's some fundamentals that I see that is missing. Now, some HOAs I've noticed are super efficient. They run meetings as good as the Board of Commissioners. Yeah. And some of them, they just don't know. And you have what I want to call bad actors in there that sort of prey upon their neighbors, which I have a real problem with. I have a problem with no transparency on meeting minutes. I have a problem with no, what I want to call elections, right? No consistent elections, no notices. It's things like that that there should be at least a standard. If not a training class, a certification, anybody that's an officer needs to be held to a certain degree of standard. There must be something that can be held, to me, even in the Superior Court where they have to file their annual financials. There has to be something. Because again, it just seems like there's problems and people are being preyed upon. What do you think about that? What are your thoughts about that? Some type of certification for the officers of the board?
Yeah, and I think that's something that could possibly be done on the state level as well as the county level, kind of similar to what you all did with your HOAs and making sure those amenities are bonded. I think we should work on doing something statewide to have members of a HOA exec board to be certified and have some type of training.
Right.
When you think about it, Commissioner, you think about it, they are, a governmental body
Right.
that's not elected by the citizens of a district or a county or the state, but they can take your house away from you. If you get enough liens against your home,
Right.
at some point in time, they can take away your home, and they can take you and pull you into court litigation, file lawsuits, and the whole nine. So, with that much power, I think just like us, Commissioner, you've been to the Carl Vinson Institute. You have been involved with ACCG and training. I've been involved with training as a legislator. You just need to have that training, that certification. If you're going to have that much power to find a resident of your community, your neighbor, to place a lien on your neighbor's home and to possibly haul them into court. You just need to have a baseline that everyone across the state uniform training. So therefore they know the best practices and they know how to conduct meetings, Robert Rules of Order, and the whole nine, but dealing with their own neighbors.
And that's my point. We're neighbors. And they get into a bit worse than me and my commissioner peers. I mean, they go at each other and something. I'm like, ooh. But to that point, and you bring up a good point, which is, right, they need to be trained, they need to be certified, but you talked about power. So you have this board of directors, they are elected. That means that's trust. Therefore, there should be transparency and accountability, right? Where does that come in, right? They are elected. They're elected amongst their neighbors, right? They're now on this board. They do have this power. I mean, we're going through the situation right now in my district, in your district, and we'll talk about it offline, where that very thing, lien is being put against this person's house, whatever the background is and stuff. And so he's fretting. I mean, he said, and then attorney's fees are greater than what the lien is. And so then you have, and then he can't get access to them. They're not talking, they're running blocking, tackling. I mean, that's the stuff that I would be brought in front of ethics if I did something like that at the local level. So where is that accountability at? So what do you think about that part?
No, I Commission, I completely agree with you on that, because just like you said, you will be brought in on ethics. I'll be brought in on ethics. If you're elected to any position of trust or have some type of fiduciary duty, you need to have some type of oversight. Right. Think about it, as elected officials, we have to file disclosures and let people know, our constituents, lobbyists, any citizen, the world, know what you are spending your campaign funds on and who are you collecting that money from as well in donations. And so it's just amount of transparency, because as local elected officials, we probably should know who's contributing to your campaign. And so I look at it the same way with HOAs. If you're going to be in charge of the books, HOA fees, you're collecting these fees, you can find someone, put a lien against a home if they don't pay these fees. Why can't the citizens of that community, your neighbors, be able to look at the books? I think that's just, even on a quarterly basis, they should be allowed to do that, because it's your money, it's your community, and your home is your biggest investment. And so if a HOA community exec board could take that away from you, surely there should be a high level of transparency in the books, the meeting minutes, and also on the election of officers. Right. Me and you are elected every 4 years. I'm elected every 2 years. You should have regularly scheduled elections, because what it does is hold your elected officers accountable. If you can vote someone in and then they never have another election, or they can call an election anytime they want to, or defer election, where's the accountability to you, the residents of that HOA community? You should have some type of accountability towards you, the HOA exec board, and as a resident, you should be able to hold the exec board accountable as well. It should be a two-way street.
Right, which is my point. Because you are held to what I call a trust or a fiduciary responsibility, you ask the question, well, why shouldn't they be allowed to look at the books? It's like, we shouldn't even be asking the question. It's a requirement. It's non-negotiable. I cannot not file my financials. You cannot
You
not
can't.
file. You can, but there's always penalties for that. But you get my point is that you
And the
still
AJC article that's gonna come behind it.
right. So to that point, so again, so you're working on it. Is something when we take up session next year? Do you think it's something that we'll revisit, or is it just right now we're still playing the COVID card? I'm
Well,
not.
I
I'm
would
just
say it's
curious.
going to be revisited. I mean, this year, of course, COVID caught everyone off guard. Uh, as far as it literally changed, I would say the state, this country, overnight. And Commissioner, I remember the day like it was yesterday. I think it was March the 13th.
Right.
Everything just completely shut down. And I remember us having to go into special session on March the 16th. To give the governor powers through his executive order to be able to basically try to bring the state together and figure a lot out in a very short period of time. And so I would say the state changed, the country changed, and even the world changed within less than a month. And so I think as far as budgetary items, I think we will be able to fund the study committee next summer this time.
Very good. Very good. So I'm going to shift gears just a little bit because again,